Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over Tropical Storm Ida, which is right now over parts of Louisiana and Mississippi, and we're going to be mainly talking about the rainfall impacts from Tropical Storm Ida. We're going to be giving you an update on that storm and timing out the rainfall over much of the eastern United States. We could have some areas getting as much as 3 to 5 or even more inches of rainfall. So let's get right into it, and let's start off with your weather photo of the day. This one's sent in by Max on his return back to Boston. He took this picture out of the plane window over coastal North Carolina. You can see the ocean right here, and I think it's actually a really cool picture because when he sent me that, and that was yesterday afternoon, I believe, when he sent me that, I checked the current satellite imagery, and I made sure to save that photo onto my phone. So I put that into this slide right here. And you can see at that time, you did have some of those clouds, kind of those tiny clouds, that kind of little bumpy clouds over coastal North Carolina. And I'm pretty sure that is what you're seeing outside of the plane window at that point. And you can see how it cuts off right at the ocean. And when you look, the ocean is clear from all the clouds, and then you can see on the radar that is also true here. So I'm pretty sure this is what you were seeing outside the window, some of those kind of tiny bumpy clouds over that coastal North Carolina area that created that cool effect with the clouds at the window. And again, that was from Max. If you want to send in your pictures, if you have any pictures from especially Hurricane Ida as it was making landfall in Louisiana or Mississippi, or if you have any pictures that you are going to take when it moves into your area, send them over to elitheweatherguyyt at gmail.com, and I'll be sure to feature your photo into one of these videos. Here's a look at the current National Weather Service page. As you can see, we have some red flag warnings in effect for the Northwest, as well as some air quality alerts for parts of California and Oregon. We have some excessive heat warnings and heat advisories in effect for a little bit of California, Nevada, and Arizona, with flood watches for pretty much the entirety of Arizona, as well as a little bit of Southern California, and then another area of flood watches up for some parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, a little bit of Arkansas even, I believe, also into Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, DC as well, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So that's where we have those flood watches currently up. We also have those tropical storm warnings and storm surge warnings currently in effect, and even a tornado watch in effect for some parts of Florida and Alabama. Yesterday, we had a high temperature tied at 119 degrees in Stovepipe Wells, California, and Death Valley, California, with a low temperature of 21 degrees Fahrenheit in Peter Sinks, Utah. The highest rainfall report was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where they got 4.05 inches of rain. No snowfall reports yesterday. Here's a look at the 5-day outlook from the National Hurricane Center. You can see that we have 4 disturbances. Starting off from east to west, you can see that we have disturbance 2, which is out there in the eastern Atlantic, has a 60% chance of developing within the next 2 days, and within the next 5 days it has an 80% chance of developing. Right now, it's just off the shore of Africa, but it will be moving further to the west out to sea over the next couple of days. The only way that I think this will become a big storm, or at least a noteworthy storm, is if this kind of stays westerly and starts to move into the Caribbean. If this does what most of these type of storms do and just curves out to sea, then it probably won't be too noteworthy, of course, because there is no land masses in that part of the Atlantic. Then we have Tropical Storm Kate, which was just upgraded from a tropical depression. And then we have Disturbance 1 out in the southwestern North Atlantic. So that's in the southwestern Caribbean, where you have a 20% chance of developing within the next 5 days. Doesn't look too good for development right now, although I can't rule it out. Of course, this part of the Caribbean is actually quite good for development, typically because of how warm the waters are. So even though it might get impeded by some of these land masses, some parts of Central America and also into Mexico might kind of intrude on the space of the storm, but I think either way, these waters are very, very conducive for development, so I think that could help this storm out. And then, of course, we have Tropical Storm Ida. Right now, it's right along the border of Louisiana and Mississippi. If we look at Tropical Storm Kate first, located at 21.5 degrees north by 50.9 degrees west, maximum sustained winds at 45 miles per hour, minimum pressure of 1,004 millibars, moving north at 8 miles per hour. So you can see this one's going out to sea. If we look at the cone forecast from the National Hurricane Center, here's Bermuda right here. So not looking like it's going to impact Bermuda. It's expected to kind of curve a little bit northwest and then eventually make a track a little bit further to the northeast. Again, it's going to be a very slow moving storm. So you can see 8 miles per hour. If you were to multiply that by 24, you're looking at something right around 160 to 200 miles northward movement per day. Not a lot for a tropical storm, so you would want to see a lot more for that from that in terms of the speed of the storm. So that is going to help it develop a little bit more. It's going to sustain tropical storm status probably, but we're not expecting any sort of development up near hurricane strength. It is possible, but even if it does do that, you can see that the only landmass that's even remotely close to it is Bermuda, and Bermuda is still a good few hundred miles to the west of the expected cone track. If we look at Tropical Storm Ida, you can see very well developed. Yesterday, you could see an actual eye. Right now, you can barely pick up that center, which is right in here. It's a very well developed and very well defined storm. What you have is that inflow coming in through here, and then of course you have the outflow on the northern side of there. So that's how the setup of this storm is looking like. It's a very well developed storm, and it's very interesting to look at it on satellite. You can see where most of that rainfall is right now, and it's right in here, mostly in the form of convective activity, located at 31.9 degrees north by 90.7 degrees west, maximum winds 40 miles per hour, minimum pressure 996 millibars, moving north at 9 miles per hour. So basically the same speed as Kate, which is out in the Atlantic, and you can see that. Again, this one's also going to be a slow mover. That's what's going to make it a big flooding threat for this part of the country, and that's going to be the main topic of this video. If we look at the track of this, you can see where it's expected to be. Now, yesterday, it was a much more northerly track where we were expecting it to be somewhat like this. That is still a possibility, although it looks like if you were to kind of just follow these letters here, it's expected to be a little bit further to the south. So now instead of moving out from New Hampshire or Massachusetts, it should be further to the south, probably exiting somewhere between the Delmarva and about New York and New Jersey. So that should be the main track area, and that also shifts the amount of rainfall, the total rainfall and heaviest rainfall, a little bit further south. So instead of yesterday where we were expecting it a little bit to the north like this, now it's expected to be further to the south, so something a little bit more like that. If we look at the key messages, the first one says dangerous storm surge inundation will continue into this afternoon along portions of the coast of Mississippi and Alabama. Second one says tropical storm force winds, especially in gusts, will continue over portions of southeastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and southern Alabama this afternoon. The third one says Ida will continue to produce heavy rainfall tonight through Tuesday morning across portions of southeast Louisiana, Mississippi, and western Alabama, resulting in considerable flash and urban flooding and significant river flooding impacts. Rivers in the lower Mississippi Valley will remain elevated into next week. As Ida moves inland, additional considerable flooding impacts are likely across portions of the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, and particularly in the central and southern Appalachians into the mid-Atlantic through Wednesday. Fourth one says in areas that experience damage and power loss, individuals should use extreme caution during the recovery phase. Post-storm fatalities and injuries often result from heart attacks, heat exhaustion, accidents related to cleanup and recovery, and carbon monoxide poisoning from improper generator use. So if you are in the path or you were in the path of Ida, especially if you live in southeastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi. I know at one point there was over 1 million people within the general New Orleans, Baton Rouge area which had power out. So hopefully they're getting that power restored, but it is going to be difficult because of course they don't want to restore the power while it's still raining because of course electricity and water don't mix well, and you're going to have to wait for most of that standing water which is still flooding these roads to kind of get out out of the way for them to actually be able to restore some of that power. And power isn't even the big issue now. It's mostly the flooding, especially in some of the areas outside of the levee system, which only covers the main metropolitan area. So if you live in the areas south of the city, or even north or east of the city, you're not really protected by that levee system. So there were mandatory evacuation notices. Of course, some people didn't follow those, but hopefully you guys did, because there was a bunch of flooding into those areas. We saw upwards of 7 to 10 inches of rainfall or more, plus whatever storm surge was impacting that area. So really not a good situation down there, and I know they're already doing some recovery efforts today to try and clean up after that storm. So hopefully everybody who's down there is doing well, and hopefully everybody who's in the path of the storm is also preparing, at least for the threat of flash flooding. Again, this is not going to be the main impacts inland. Let's say if you live in the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Central Appalachias, not really going to be a wind threat. It's mostly going to be that rain and the potential for flooding. Let's time this out with the NOAA model. So you can see that for tonight, the storm is expected to move slightly further to the northeast. You can see some of the heavier rainfall on the eastern side of this, but you're going to start to see that this southern, more convective side of the storm is going to dissipate, and it's going to become more of an extratropical cyclone over the next couple of days. So here would be by Tuesday morning or tomorrow morning into tonight into tomorrow morning. And you can see that southern part of the storm, again, phasing out. We're not dealing with as much convective activity, and now it's mostly just rainfall in the form of light to moderate, steady rain in parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. Let's move this on a little bit more, and you can see that by Tuesday later on in the morning. So we're looking at around 7 or 8 a.m. Central Time. You're dealing with this storm. The low pressure center now into northeastern Mississippi, but we're dealing with most of the rain into Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. You're going to see that this continues to glide away further to the northeast. So this would be by Tuesday early afternoon in northern Alabama, northern Georgia, some parts of the Carolina, Western Carolina, and also into parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, even into Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Now starting to get in on some of that rainfall, although the heaviest rainfall still down in the Tennessee Valley. Moves a little bit further northeast by tomorrow night. If we look at early morning hours on Wednesday, you can see now it's starting to pull away to the northeast quite considerably. So now the rain is almost all over for these areas that were originally impacted by Ida. So areas like Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Western Tennessee, you're all out of the rainfall, which is very good, because if you remember a couple, maybe just a few days ago, we had that flooding in and around northwestern Tennessee. I believe it was right in here. So luckily they're going to get rid of that rainfall quite quickly. In terms of the storm, that should pass over them quickly, and hopefully most of that rainfall, most of the flooding, is all gone by this point. Hopefully most of that water receded into the ground, but again, that was a bad situation over there with all the flooding that they had in that area. If we move this on to Wednesday later on in the morning, you can see that we still have that rain up through the spine of the Appalachians. If we move over the view to the northeast, you can now start to see that some areas like New York, New Jersey, and much of Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware are now getting impacted by some of that rainfall, but the heavy stuff is still out further to the west into Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania. So mainly along the Appalachians and that general area is where we're dealing with the rainfall by that point. We have to go to a lower resolution model by now, because the high resolution NAM model does not go out far enough. But you can see that the NAM 12KM still showing some of that rainfall into parts of the mid-Atlantic and the coastal northeast. If we move this on a little bit more, you can see that moderate to even heavy rainfall at times continues to engulf the northeast. This would be by Wednesday night into Thursday early morning. Later on in the morning on Thursday, still raining into parts of the northeast, except for that again the interior tier of the United States, of the northeast. This is the only area that probably won't be impacted too much by the rainfall. But I would say if you're within, let's say, 100 miles of the coast, you're probably still going to be, not even 100 miles, probably 50 miles of the coast, you're still going to be impacted by decent or heavy rainfall at times. moving this on, this is the last frame that we have available of this model, but you can see that still some decent rainfall into New England, especially eastern New York, parts of New Jersey as well, dealing with some of that rainfall all the way down to Delaware and Maryland. Here's a look at the total rainfall from the European model, and you can see that we're looking at 1 to 2 inches in the yellow, 2 to about 5 inches in the red colors. We're looking at 5 to 7 inches in those browns, and then in that kind of purple color, which you see over Pennsylvania and a little bit of West Virginia and Maryland, that's where we're looking at over 7 inches up to 10 inches of rainfall. So a ton of rainfall is possible. If we kind of zoom in here and we look at what the Weather Prediction Center is showing for their total rainfall forecast, you can see how they have a big stripe of decent rainfall, which goes from just about Nashville all the way to the coastal Northeast and southern New England. So I would say about a 25 to 50 mile stripe, we have a big area that we're expecting to see 4 to 6 inches of rainfall. So that goes through Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Maryland, northern Virginia, southern Pennsylvania, also into northern Delaware, central New Jersey, and then all the way through Long Island and southern New England. So that's where we're dealing with the bulk of that rainfall. And again, this line is probably going to shift a little bit further to the north, maybe a little bit further to the south over the next couple of days. This is not set in stone, but we do know that somewhere is going to see, of course, this 4 to 6 inch area. The most variability is going to be when it heads into the northeast. So there are some models that bring that heaviest rainfall up here. There's others that bring it further south. The WPC model, or the Weather Prediction Center's model, is showing that this is going to be probably somewhere right in the middle. Although, again, we're going to still have to see. This is through the next about 5 days or so. So there's still a ton of room for this to change. If you look at the chances of flash flooding, you can see that for today, we have a moderate risk in effect for parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, as well as a little bit of Florida. If we continue this on, here would be for tomorrow, and you can see that we have that for mainly parts of Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, a little bit of Virginia, and also into West Virginia. And then if we look at for the third day outlook, which would be for Wednesday, you can see that that extends into parts of West Virginia, Northern Virginia, also into Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, where we have the moderate risk of flash flooding over the next couple of days. So the rainfall, mainly because it's going to be so steady, it's not going to really move too fast. It's going to potentially cause some issues with flash flooding, and you're not going to really see too much convection with this, which means that it's not going to be a hit or miss type of storm. It looks like a good 50-mile swath of the country will be dealing with this heavy rainfall. So if you're in that swath, you're probably not going to stop. It's probably not going to stop raining for a good 18 to 36 hours at minimum. So it's going to be a fairly long-lasting event. And because of how wide the storm is, because it's not convective, meaning that you're not going to be dealing with isolated thunderstorms here and there embedded within the storm, it's not going to all come down at once, and it's going to gradually pile up. So that should give some of these rivers a little bit more of a chance, where maybe if it was 2 inches of rainfall within half an hour, might cause a little bit more flooding than if it's, let's say, 4 inches over the course of maybe 18 hours or something like that. So it should be a little bit better in that case, but it looks like it'll cover a much wider area than what we would see if you were to see maybe just a little bit more of a convective storm, mainly based on thunderstorm activity. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.